North Korea, officially known as the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, DPRK, is one of the most enigmatic and secretive countries in the world. For over 7 decades, the country has existed under an authoritarian regime, ruled by a single family lineage and shaped by both internal and external forces. Despite its relatively young age as a state, North Korea has a rich, complex history that is deeply rooted in its geopolitics, national identity, and unique system of governance. This article provides an in-depth look at North Korea, offering a comprehensive understanding of its emergence, its leaders, the people who inhabit it, and the intricate web of rules and traditions that define daily life. Through this exploration, we will also touch on the country's social systems, economy, and the pervasive presence of its ruling Kim family. Furthermore, we will discuss what needs to happen for this regime to collapse, the myths that surround North Korea, and provide insight into the challenges and nuances of being a North Korean citizen. A brief historical overview of North Korea's emergence. North Korea, a nation located on the northern half of the Korean peninsula, was not always the isolated authoritarian state it is today. The history of Korea, which stretches back over 2 millennia, underwent dramatic changes in the 20th century, particularly during and after World War II. From 1910 to 1945, Korea was under Japanese colonial rule, a period that left deep scars in the collective memory of Koreans. After Japan's defeat in World War II, Korea was liberated, but the Korean peninsula was divided into 2 zones of occupation. The Soviet Union controlled the north, while the United States occupied the south. This division set the stage for the creation of 2 separate states, which would develop along vastly different lines. In 1948, the Republic of Korea, South Korea, was established in the south, with Syngman Rhee as its first president. Simultaneously, in the north, the Soviet-backed Democratic People's Republic of Korea, North Korea, was founded under the leadership of Kim Il-sung. The division between the 2 Koreas would eventually lead to the Korean War, 1950 to 1953, a brutal conflict that left both countries in ruins but solidified the separation that continues to this day. Kim Il-sung, the founding father of North Korea. Kim Il-sung, the first ruler of North Korea, remains an iconic and revered figure in the country. His legacy as the eternal president is woven into the very fabric of North Korean identity. Born in 1912 under the name Kim Sun-chu, Kim Il-sung's ascent to power was marked by his role in the anti-Japanese resistance movement during Korea's colonial period. After the Japanese surrender in 1945, Kim became a key figure in the communist movement in Korea and, with Soviet backing, established the North Korean regime in 1948. Kim Il-sung's rise to power was characterized by a deep loyalty to the Soviet Union, which he ultimately distanced himself from after consolidating power. His leadership transformed the country into a single-party state, with him as the supreme leader. His leadership was marked by a mix of personality cult and strict control, including purges of perceived political rivals. One of the most striking aspects of Kim Il-sung's rule was the creation of the Kim Il-sungism, a distinctive ideology that combined Marxism-Leninism with elements of Korean nationalism. This unique ideology formed the bedrock of North Korea's governance and has continued to influence the country even after his death in 1994. Kim Il-sung's reign was also defined by his control over the military and the establishment of a totalitarian state. His image was everywhere in North Korea, on billboards, buildings, in homes, and even in schools. His portraits were so ubiquitous that damaging one could result in criminal punishment, with some even facing harsh prison sentences for this offense. In fact, there is a chilling story about a woman who, during a fire, chose to save portraits of Kim Il-sung rather than her children, which led to a severe penalty for prioritizing the leader's image over her own children's lives. Kim Jong Il, the reclusive leader. Kim Il-sung's son, Kim Jong Il, succeeded him after his death in 1994. Kim Jong Il was born in 1941, during his father's time in exile in the Soviet Union. According to North Korean propaganda, Kim Jong Il's birth was marked by supernatural signs, a double rainbow, and the appearance of a bright star in the sky, an image meant to elevate him to the level of divine leadership. In reality, Kim Jong Il was born in the Soviet Union, but his image as a son of Mount Baekdu, a sacred mountain in Korean folklore, was cultivated for the public to reinforce his leadership as a continuation of the Kim dynasty's divine mandate. Kim Jong Il's rule was marked by a strong personality cult similar to that of his father, but his reign also took a turn toward more eccentric behavior. A key element of Kim Jong Il's personality was his obsession with luxury, which was in stark contrast to the dire living conditions of the majority of North Koreans. For example, Kim Jong Il was known for spending enormous sums of money on imported cognac. His annual expenditure on this luxury item was 800 times the average North Korean's annual income. Similarly, he imported expensive cheeses from Italy on chartered flights, further showcasing his affinity for luxury at a time when much of the country was struggling with famine and poverty. Kim Jong-un, the current leader. Kim Jong Il passed away in 2011, leaving his son, Kim Jong-un, to take the reins of the North Korean leadership. Kim Jong-un, born in 1983 or 1984, is the third and youngest leader in the Kim dynasty. Though initially seen as an inexperienced leader, Kim Jong-un has rapidly consolidated power and has made his mark through a combination of military posturing, nuclear weapons development, and a continuation of the personality cult surrounding his family. One of the most notable aspects of Kim Jong-un's leadership is his image as a somewhat more relatable figure compared to his father. He is often seen in public with a more approachable demeanor, smiling and engaging with the people. However, this image hides a ruthlessness that has been evident in his leadership style. For instance, Kim Jong-un has been responsible for purging several high-ranking officials, including his uncle, Jang Song-thaek, who was executed in 2013. Under Kim Jong-un's rule, North Korea has continued to pursue its nuclear weapons program, and the country has faced increasing international sanctions as a result. North Korea today, economy, society, and the people. North Korea's economy is one of the most isolated and centrally controlled in the world. The country operates under a system known as juche, which emphasizes self-reliance and independence from outside influence. Despite this ideology, North Korea is heavily dependent on trade with China, particularly for food and energy supplies. The country also faces chronic shortages in basic goods, and the majority of North Koreans live in poverty. Average wages are meager, and the economy is largely dependent on state-controlled industries and agriculture. North Korea's social system is equally rigid. The government enforces strict control over almost every aspect of life, including work, education, and even personal relationships. The country operates under a system of songbun, a hereditary classification system that ranks people based on their family background, political loyalty, and perceived ideological purity. Those from families with a good songbun, meaning they are loyal to the regime, are given better access to resources and opportunities, while those with a bad songbun are relegated to lower social status and restricted in their employment and living conditions. Tourism and myths about North Korea. Despite the strict control over its population and the isolationist nature of the regime, North Korea does attract some tourists, albeit under tightly controlled conditions. Tourists can only visit the country as part of an official tour group, and all visits are monitored by government minders. Visits to landmarks such as the Kim Il-sung Mausoleum and the Mansudae Grand Monument are part of the itinerary, but tourists are limited in their ability to explore the country independently. Visits to Pyongyang, the capital, are the most common, though there are limited tours available to rural areas where visitors can witness the stark contrast between the capital and the rest of the country. The rise of Kim Jong-un. From Swiss schools to supreme leader. The current leader of North Korea, Kim Jong-un, is the third generation of his family to rule the country. Born in the early 1980s, though the exact date remains shrouded in mystery, Kim Jong-un's rise to power was swift and calculated. When his father, Kim Jong Il, passed away in December 2011, Kim Jong-un, at the age of around 29, became the world's youngest head of state. His ascension was carefully orchestrated by his father, who prepared him to take on the responsibilities of leadership, despite the lack of a formal education or experience in governance. Before taking on the role of North Korea's leader, Kim Jong-un spent time in Switzerland. His years at an international school in the early 1990s were marked by his relatively quiet and unassuming demeanor. Under the alias Pak Un-ji, Kim Jong-un lived with his sister, Kim Yo-jong, and his uncle, Kim Jong Il. During his time in Switzerland, Kim Jong-un was exposed to Western culture, languages, and ideas. He studied German, French, English, mathematics, and science while nurturing a love for basketball, video games, and American movies. His passion for sports, particularly basketball, would later shape his diplomatic ties, most notably with former NBA star Dennis Rodman, a relationship that has garnered international attention. The Kim dynasty and the monarchy-like power structure North Korea is officially a socialist state, but its actual governance structure significantly diverges from traditional socialist or communist models. While the regime adopts Marxist-Leninist principles, in practice, it more closely resembles a hereditary monarchy. Power in North Korea passes from father to son, an unbroken dynastic line that has continued since the country's founding. Kim Il-sung, the first leader of North Korea, established the political foundation of the country and maintained control through his personal cult of personality. His son, Kim Jong Il, succeeded him, and now his grandson, Kim Jong-un, holds the reins of power. The Kim family's succession is not based on merit, capability, or the will of the people. It is an inheritance that follows a clear line of descent. Kim Jong-un's rise to power was cemented in December 2011, following his father's death, marking a defining moment in the continuity of the Kim family's rule. This hereditary transfer of power means that North Korea's leadership remains tightly controlled, and the regime is unlikely to collapse as long as the Kim family is able to maintain its grip on the country. Kim Jong-un's leadership, while characterized by the continuation of the family legacy, also reflects his personal interests and priorities. His deep passion for cinema, which predated his leadership, is one of the more unusual aspects of his reign. Kim Jong-un's love for movies is well documented, and it is not only a personal hobby, but also a key part of his public persona. Even before ascending to power, Kim Jong-un was instrumental in managing and contributing to the opening of the CK Studio, a North Korean animation studio that, according to some reports, has been involved in producing cartoons not only for the domestic market, but also for the world. The studio is rumored to have contributed to the animation of Western shows such as Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Totally Spies, The Simpsons, and SpongeBob SquarePants. This connection to the global entertainment industry is a curious facet of a country that is otherwise known for its strict censorship and isolation from the outside world. The digital control, information and censorship in North Korea. One of the most striking features of life in North Korea is the regime's control over information. The government maintains a strict monopoly over access to information, with harsh punishments for anyone caught disseminating foreign media. In North Korea, the spread of outside culture and information is seen as a direct threat to the regime's authority. This control is enforced by an extensive network of informants, with one for every 50 citizens. These informants play a crucial role in maintaining the state's ideological purity, reporting any suspicious activity or behavior that could potentially undermine the regime. Kim Jong-un, recognizing the growing influence of foreign media and the underground circulation of South Korean and Chinese films and books, has sought to clamp down on the flow of foreign information. The introduction of an altered version of the Linux operating system serves as a key part of this effort. This modified Linux system, while ostensibly providing access to digital tools and files, only allows users to view documents that have been certified by the authorities. Any attempt to transfer unauthorized files, such as academic papers or personal documents, is blocked, ensuring that all digital content remains tightly regulated. Additionally, computer screens are periodically monitored through screenshots, which are stored and reviewed to detect any signs of subversion or unauthorized activity. The enormous consequences of defying the regime. In North Korea, punishment is not limited to the individual. Entire families can be punished for the actions of a single member. This is part of the country's 3 generations policy, which dictates that if one member of a family is accused of committing a crime or defecting, the punishment is extended to 3 generations. This brutal policy ensures that citizens remain loyal to the regime, as even the slightest deviation from the accepted norms can have dire consequences not only for the individual, but for their entire lineage. Religious beliefs, particularly Christianity, are viewed with intense suspicion. The regime believes that Christianity, along with other religions, promotes Western values that are incompatible with North Korean ideology. As a result, possessing religious materials, such as a Bible, is a criminal act, and individuals caught practicing any religion face severe punishment. Even international communication, such as making a phone call abroad, is illegal, and citizens are strictly forbidden from having access to the internet. Only a small number of individuals, primarily high-ranking officials and diplomats, have access to the outside world through the internet, and they are tasked with maintaining the regime's narrative both domestically and internationally. The military and social structure of North Korea. North Korea is one of the most militarized countries in the world. Every citizen, regardless of gender, is required to serve in the military. Men serve for between 5 and 12 years, depending on their assignment, while women are required to serve for 3 years. The country's military-first policy, known as Songun, places the military at the center of national life and prioritizes its needs above all else. The elite in North Korea are largely insulated from the struggles that the majority of the population faces. They enjoy privileges, including access to luxury goods, high salaries, and the ability to travel abroad. However, the vast majority of North Koreans live under strict surveillance, with little to no access to the outside world. Their lives are governed by the strict class and caste system known as Songbun, which dictates their status within society based on their family background. Those who are categorized as enemies of the state are relegated to the lowest rungs of society, denied access to basic necessities such as food, and punished severely if they are caught in acts of defiance. Military prioritization and the state budget. One of the most striking features of North Korea's governance is its overwhelming commitment to military power. More than 16% of the state's budget is allocated for military purposes, a staggering figure when compared to most nations worldwide. This allocation reflects the regime's deep belief in military strength as essential for maintaining its sovereignty, both within the country and against external threats. The military-first policy, also known as Songun, underpins the state's strategy for survival and is a clear symbol of the Kim family's control over both the country and its armed forces. The unyielding grip of the Kim Dynasty, North Korea's political and social systems are marked by strict control, inherited power, and a pervasive culture of surveillance. Despite the country's economic challenges, international isolation, and the suffering of its people, the Kim family continues to maintain a stranglehold on the country's leadership. Kim Jong-un, like his father and grandfather before him, remains committed to preserving the regime and ensuring that the Kim dynasty remains the central force in North Korean life. As long as the elite benefit from the status quo, the regime is unlikely to collapse. The lack of a viable alternative, combined with the loyalty demanded through fear, ensures that the Kim family's control will continue. North Korea remains a country defined by its isolation, repression, and the unyielding power of its leaders, with little hope for reform or change in the near future. Social control. Hairstyles and ideology. In 2013, Kim Jong-un famously published a list of approved hairstyles, with 28 options, 18 for women and 10 for men. While this list is not strictly mandatory, it reveals the regime's desire to control even the most personal aspects of life. North Koreans are encouraged to follow these guidelines, and while short hair is generally accepted, long or dyed hair is often frowned upon. This minor yet significant rule speaks to the broader culture of conformity that permeates the society. The government's desire for uniformity extends beyond fashion and grooming, reaching into the very fabric of North Korean life. In this isolated state, there is no room for diversity in identity or lifestyle. Homosexuality, for instance, is non-existent in the public consciousness. The regime propagates the belief that the country is so pure and incorruptible that the concept of LGBT rights cannot possibly exist. Technological isolation, surveillance and control. In keeping with its tight grip on society, North Korea is highly restrictive when it comes to technology and digital communication. The use of devices running on Android or iOS, including smartphones and computers, is prohibited. The government allows for Chinese-made smartphones that operate on a modified Android system, giving authorities extensive surveillance capabilities over their citizens. This system is designed to ensure that the flow of information is controlled and North Koreans are unable to access any outside content that could challenge the regime's narrative. The country's internet infrastructure is similarly isolated. There is no access to the global web. Instead, citizens are restricted to a closed, internal network known as the Kwangmyong. Only 2,000 people, mostly high-ranking officials, have access to the broader internet, giving them a limited understanding of the outside world. For most North Koreans, even making an international phone call is considered a crime. Work culture and propaganda. The North Korean government enforces an ideology of constant labor. Citizens are required to work 6 days a week, with little to no downtime. Even during their free time, North Koreans are expected to engage in state-sponsored volunteer work or attend political meetings. This system reinforces the idea that work is a moral duty and contributes to the greater good of the nation and its leader. The government has also perfected the art of controlling its population through propaganda, using every available medium to enforce the ideology of the ruling regime. Citizens are bombarded with constant reminders of the greatness of their leaders, Kim Il-sung, Kim Jong Il, and Kim Jong-un. Monuments, posters, and billboards adorn every public space, reminding people of their collective loyalty to the Kim family. The regime actively promotes the idea that the leader is both a political and spiritual guide, with absolute power over every aspect of life. Economic struggles, poverty and corruption. While the regime maintains a strong military presence, the country's economic reality paints a stark contrast. Despite some improvements in recent years, particularly following assistance from China and South Korea, poverty remains endemic. Approximately 40 to 60% of the population lives below the poverty line, and food insecurity continues to be a serious problem. Meat, for instance, is considered a luxury item, and many citizens subsist on a basic diet of rice and vegetables. The country's economic system still operates under a form of rationing reminiscent of the Soviet era. Basic goods are distributed through ration coupons, and this system often leaves ordinary citizens struggling to meet their daily needs. Some of the country's wealthier citizens may receive additional resources, but these people are often high-ranking officials or individuals with significant connections. The Pyongyang elite and social mobility. Although the regime strictly controls its population, there is a social ladder in North Korea. Citizens are divided into different categories based on their loyalty to the state, known as the Songbun system. This system determines who has access to education, employment, and basic necessities like food. People who are categorized as loyal enjoy better access to opportunities, while those labeled as enemies of the state face severe limitations. The ruling elite in Pyongyang, the capital city, enjoys privileges that are unavailable to those living in rural areas. For example, it is common for highly regarded engineers, military personnel, and political figures to receive free apartments based on their merits. However, for ordinary North Koreans, owning property is a distant dream. A basic apartment in Pyongyang might cost upwards of $30,000, a sum that is unattainable for most citizens. For those in rural areas or lower classes, opportunities for economic advancement are limited. Nevertheless, a few avenues for social mobility exist. Some people may start small businesses, selling fruits or vegetables, for instance, and, through bribery and connections, climb the social ladder. North Korea's attractions, a tourist's view. While it may seem like a strange place for tourism, North Korea has some notable landmarks and attractions that draw curious visitors. The capital city, Pyongyang, is home to several monumental structures, including the Tower of the Yucha Idea, the Victory Museum, and the Mansudae Grand Monument, which depicts the statues of Kim Il-sung and Kim Jong Il. Other attractions, like the State Circus and the Reunification Arch, reflect the country's commitment to showcasing its achievements and ideologies. These attractions, however, are not meant for spontaneous exploration. Tourists must book their trips through government-approved tour operators, and visitors are heavily monitored throughout their stay. Challenges and restrictions. an ongoing struggle for North Koreans. Despite the grandeur of Pyongyang's monuments and the state's efforts to maintain an image of prosperity, life for most North Koreans remains difficult. The country's isolation, military-focused economy, and intense social control ensure that any sense of freedom is virtually non-existent. Access to information is tightly regulated, with citizens unable to freely engage with the outside world or even express dissent within their own borders. Those who attempt to escape face severe punishment, often involving imprisonment in labor camps or worse. The cost of living and escaping North Korea. The cost of living in North Korea is low by international standards, but wages are similarly meager. For example, an engineer in Pyongyang might earn $1,500 a year, a small sum when compared to the costs of housing, food, and other basic needs. On the other hand, corruption plays a significant role in North Korean society. Bribery is often necessary to access medical care, secure housing, or even obtain a job. Despite the severe restrictions, some North Koreans attempt to escape the country. The price of escape is currently estimated at between $10,000 and $15,000, a sum that many can't afford. However, for those who can, the journey often involves crossing into China and finding ways to navigate a complicated web of borders and international laws.